We've talked about this quite a few times on the podcast. This has been debated about so much over the last 2 weeks or so in the competitive Call of Duty space. But gentlemen's agreements for people who are not, not aware or maybe are newer viewers to competitive Call of Duty. GAs, as they are commonly known, are not official rules, but they are rules abided by the players, specifically in the CDL, to not use a certain weapon, not use a certain ability or a feature of the game. And everyone at the time, or it's thought that they agree to these things. Of course, GAs can be broken, and that causes controversy in and of itself. But GAs are essentially ways to make it more competitively viable, more competitive in general. But the players themselves are making these GAs. They are agreeing to these GAs. And that is not a popular thing among CDL fans. And even this is the first time that I've seen the former pro players, the streamers, the very popular members of the community that are not active players. This is one of the first times that I've seen those people say this is BS, and I can't stand the COD players deciding that this is what should happen or this is what shouldn't happen, and these GAs don't make any sense. I'd like to get your opinion on this, Bink, because is it just me, or has it felt like players like Zuma, and I've seen Shroud get in on this, but I've seen multiple very popular streamers come out and say these GAs are stupid and the current CDL players are kind of ruining it for competitive Call of Duty in general. Am I kind of off base or thinking that it's more common now than it has been in the past?
I think it's just because over the years now it's become a lot more like public. Like last year, like Zuma was like the quote unquote GA commissioner, and he was going around trying to like police this, and like he was giving out red cards and joking like that when people were like stair glitching or whatever in matches. So like it's definitely become more of a public topic. Like whereas in the past, I think Aches was even talking about on one of the Flank episodes, like GAs happened back in the older games, but nobody really knew about it because no one was talking about it like the public. Like the players knew what they were and weren't going to use, but nobody really knew outside of that, and it wasn't as big of a deal. So I don't know, you know, necessarily everything behind that, and I really haven't been keeping up with the GA drama this time around, just because it hasn't been in season yet, so I haven't really gotten a feel for how it is going to affect the upcoming season. I know the one thing was like the melee weapons or the knives, like being in and being out or whatever the case may be. But the biggest thing with GAs and why I have always it's going to be like kind of like a multifaceted answer here, because I think there are some reasons why GAs are necessary and good, but at the same time there's some reasons why like you said, they've been taking things a little too far, especially in recent years. Is that Call of Duty in itself as a game is not competitive focused, or it's not created to just be a competitive game like like a counter CS:GO or CS2 or League of Legends. Like that's not where the focus is. The competitive COD community is a subsection of just Call of Duty that has spawned from this more casual game, and the developers are not developing the game from a competitive mindset, and that's why there's so many like maps that just don't fit for what we've come as a community to expect from a competitive map, and just one among many issues that arise because, as I said, Call of Duty is competitively it is not competitively founded. It's just a result of the more casual game. um at the same time, though, my thing with GAs that's seemingly always been what happens over the years is that these guns get GA'd by the pros, and then even if the devs do address the gun and nerf it or tweak it in some way, it is never revisited. So let's just use like this year, like the XM4 or the M4 traditionally, and in Call of Duty was seemingly GA'd right away. If Treyarch comes out literally tomorrow and says they've nerfed it into the ground and it's not anywhere close to as good as it was, even if they like say that publicly and just mega nerf it, the pros won't go back and test it and be like, oh, we'll un-GA this because the gun sucks now. It just won't happen. They'll just continue to use what they start to use, and that's been my gripe with GAs over the years, is that thing. And again, this goes back to that give and take where the devs aren't tweaking the guns necessarily a ton or for a competitive mindset. So the pros have to do something to try and make the gameplay that they're playing, for their jobs and livelihoods as fair and balanced as possible. They have to step in and do something. That's where the GAs come in. But then when you're GAing a ton of stuff and then changes are made and they aren't testing that stuff after changes are made, that's where I start to have an issue with it. So it's really a never-ending loop until, I know we've talked about it, like something like COD Mobile, which has like, legendary COD guns and maps from past games that we know work for a competitive basis. Like it, until some like competitive version of that is made where that is the main focus and that's the game that the CDL is played on, which I don't think that'll ever happen because Activision makes too much money from a yearly release. This is going to be some instance of an issue, and finding that fine line there between having a balanced competitive game and getting rid of too much stuff and having too many GAs, that's always going to be a tug of war.
So what you were saying is completely factual in that Call of Duty is made for casual players. It is made for the Jimmies and Joes that buy it on Christmas and they drop 0.6 KDs and team deathmatch. That's kind of the player base. Like I forget what the percentage was, but it's like 60% of players like that play multiplayer like only play TDM because that's the first one at the top of the menu. It's it's something ridiculous like that where people aren't experimenting. The vast majority and the people that are never probably going to watch the CDL because it's completely like it is a niche of a niche. Like there's competitive Call of Duty, which you can even lump in Warzone at this point. Like that there are tournaments and stuff, and like the CDL is a section of that. So it is a relatively small community when you look at how popular and how widely played Call of Duty is on a grand scale. So GAs are, I think, a good thing in essence or in theory. So you don't have bouncing betties, you don't have claymores, you don't have all of the things that people are like, this is absolutely ridiculous. You don't have riot shields. So that's good. I'm sure there are some people that disagree with that. I believe Clayster at one point advocated for the use of all of the weapons and all of the equipment in Call of Duty to kind of bridge the gap between the competitive community and the casual community. I wouldn't go that far because I don't think that if you add claymores and bouncing betties to competitive, I don't think that you're going to add a bunch of casual players that are now going to watch competitive. I just don't see that happening. I think that is probably that's fool's gold. You hope that it happens, but I don't think that it would actually happen. But GAs, like you were saying, they can go too far, and they often do. And the reason that they do is because the players are the ones that get to decide what are GA'd and what is not. And granted, that's the logical thing to do because the players play this game. They know the game better than anybody. They probably, on a player level, they know it better than some of the developers know the game because they put more hours into finding little ways to get better or to be better than other players. At the same point, though, the players are doing it to benefit themselves. They're not altruistic. They're not saying, well, this is what is better for competitive Call of Duty in general. A lot of them are thinking, would this help my team? Would this help me personally? And we can GA based off of that. They're probably not going to say that very much because it makes them look selfish, because it is selfish, but that's how it is. And like you were saying, some players are just never going to revisit any of these guns, any of the maps, any of the features that get GA'd at the beginning of the game. They're just like, that's gone. Like, you might as well just throw it away, take it out of the game, because they're just never going to do anything with it. They're never going to go back and say, maybe we should, be open-minded about this. It's just not going to happen unless they are absolutely forced to do that. So it comes down to the developers. It comes down to the CDL to say, hey, we will tune these weapons as often and as much as we need to strike a competitive balance where the competitive players enjoy doing this or enjoy playing with these guns, and it's still not ridiculous for casual players. That's hard. The developers have an impossible job, in my opinion, but that's the only way that this is going to work. It's only going to work if the developers and the people running the CDL are working in unison to make this as best of a competitive environment as possible, and they work with the players to do that. And I think the players probably take advantage of it because they don't trust the developers to do the right thing or to work with them. And I think that they're probably right in doing that. This time around, it's been sniping was, I think, the biggest thing of this latest round of GAs. That's something that cannot be GA'd, in my opinion, because sniping is one of the hallmarks of Call of Duty. It is, sniping clans were huge, a huge part of two of the biggest brands in competitive Call of Duty, FaZe and Optic. And if you're, saying by extension, LA Thieves, because Nadeshot was a part of Optic, you can't take away sniping. It's too much into the fabric of Call of Duty and by extension competitive Call of Duty. So that's my opinion on that.
And to be clear too, as far as I'm aware at least, and this GA for sniping was not like what I'm understanding was that the attachments for snipers were GA'd no matter what. So it was a bare sniper with no attachments on it that they were being allowed to use, and then they took it a step further and said no snipers, period. Like, that is where it starts to cross the line in my eyes. If you're, and I know, again, haven't been keeping up with it too much, but I did catch whatever flank it was where they were talking about it, and Zuma was the one who was saying, like, sniping is the worst in this game that it has been in a while, and we're still just getting rid of it off the rip, and, like, not even, like, considering it, especially at the point of not allowing a sniper with no attachments. Like, that's basically like, if you don't have attachments on it, that thing, you miss your shot, your reticle is kicking up to the sky and you're getting beamed by someone if they shoot back. Like, so it would be, yeah, it's a one-shot kill, and that's what a lot of the pros want to avoid. But if you miss your shot, it could be super punishing with no attachments on it to begin with. So hopefully they find some way to try and work that out. Again, I haven't done a ton of sniping in multiplayer, so I don't really have a good feel for it myself. But if someone like Zuma, who even like he's someone who back in the day was known for sniping a little bit when he wasn't busy just flanking people like crazy, and I'd like to hear. I know Octane got his start in competitive before he actually started being a pro as a sniper, so I'd like to hear what he has to say about it. And end of the day, yeah, I think that's a pretty good example for like GAs going to the extreme, especially in this case where it's like we're not even talking like the XM4 or whatever the ARs they GA'd, like they were GAing those with attachments and stuff. We're GAing a gun now where you could potentially use it without any attachments. Like, that thing is not going to be overpowered to the point where it should just be banned in my eyes.
Yeah, and it causes so many issues. I don't necessarily think that it is going to cause people to not watch the CDL, because the CDL is not popular by really any means. Like, if you're looking at comparing it to most other esports, like a CDL regular season match is getting 30, 40, 50,000 viewers. I don't think that you're going to have a massive decrease in viewership because sniping is a part of it. So you could make that argument as like it doesn't really matter from that point of view. But if you're just looking at it from the fact that Call of Duty is based on sniping, and it is a huge part of just like the reputation of Call of Duty, and that you are not actually being authentic to the esport and to the game that you're playing if you don't use snipers, or at some point. Obviously, it's really only effective in search and destroy or maybe if you want to do like break offs for like hard point, if there's like a cross that you want to look down for like the beginning of a game. But like other than that, it doesn't really matter. And I just, I think it's kind of ridiculous, but we've talked about it before, and I'm sure we will talk about it again because GAs will, as far as I know, probably always be a part of the CDL and competitive Call of Duty. So we'll talk about it at some point again, sometime this season, I'm sure.